taking a little liberty on looking back at history. The NGMA exhibition of yours, in a certain sense, condensed, I thought, or brought together a certain archival way of looking at that entire unfolding. And so it really gave a perspective. And the book that got released with Kenneth Frampton writing at that time, I think brought about certain issues which had not been completely recognized and had new meanings in the contemporary context. You know? So in that context, if I can raise, I would like to now compare two situations. And one situation is when we had invited you in the mid 80s to Ahmedabad. And you had been gracious to come down to Ahmedabad. And at that time, the Asian Games Village was much talked about, a reference point. It had been at some level across the globe recognized as the collapse of the international style. I'm just trying to bring in certain memories, and if you can recall that, because they were passionate memories at that time, and that there was a collapse of the international. And at that time, you were discussing the lessons that you had learned from Jodhpur, the inner streets of Jaisalmer, and then which emerged into the Asian. Could you briefly take us back to that time, not for the sake of nostalgia, but because sometimes I think there are lessons still within that, and I don't think time or 30 years or 20 years shifts those lessons. Some are timeless. But could you take us back? Because that whole portfolio that you all put together, and which we as young architects happen to see, I think it included Padmanabhapuram, it included Fatehpur Sikri. Until then, really, these were not projects which were much discussed in schools of architecture. And so at one level, that 80s phase, mid 80s to early 90s, was a very important phase. And when you presented, now all that kind of came back, with a rush. And I was just thinking of that time you made. It was almost a heroic presentation you made at Ahmedabad at that time. And could you take us back to that energy there and see whether in our contemporary times, what learnings, what contemporary learnings, not the age old and not the nostalgia and not the tradition, but the contemporary learnings, which Frampton says you have so well woven together. Could we have a little more on that? Because you had to race through your slides, and I think we missed a little on that.
Well, I think I'll be very brief because there are, I think, many people have talked about that period very much, and it was especially other Asian countries, Iran particularly, and even in Europe. For me, when I was the curator of the exhibition for Indian architecture in Paris, I left aside my private practice altogether, and we started working on what are the lessons for us from our traditions, and what is the thread by which we can sort of carry on our work, learn from the past, because the modernists in Europe had said they wanted a total break from their past to build something. And there's a nice essay by Professor Aurelia, who was the curator of architecture, curator of Museum of Pompidou Museum. Okay, I jumped into a situation how to the past and the present and the future, how they can be in a way fused. Europeans have not been able to do it, as he put it. And I don't want to brag too much about it. And he said, Raj Rewal is the first person to have done it, in a way. And I think, modesty apart, I will take credit for that. And because we did a lot of work, and I'm not the only one, and others have also done. But I put forward it as a kind of a manifesto. All those uh, sort of projects which we have done, how to learn from our historic past, and then what can be the lessons for us. And I try to show it in my own work. And so the works which are done that period, as you can see, and they're still very important part of my work. Like, the Rohtak University couldn't have been done if I had not done the Fatehpur Sikri in a way. And I hope I'm not the one interest. Recently, Ranjit Siddiqui has come out with a book also in which he refers to all those projects. So I'm very, in a way, uh, proud to be the person who, in a way, uh, sort of lit a path, perhaps. Uh, Others have also done it, but I was very conscious of it. And I was also very conscious to not, in a way, do what the postmodernists have done, do a pastiche or something like that. And the essence of it is what I was after. I hope I have managed to do that. I don't know if I answered your question.
Yeah, absolutely. And that's the kind of area that fascinates us, is that this grappling of a sense of memory of the past, which is not nostalgia, but which exists. And I recall one statement you had made, and now I go back to the 80s, that actually that past is alive. It's not a past which is a heritage and over. That past is existing with us. It is alive around us, and it's a matter of, maybe in the name of the avant-garde or modernism, we tend to not look at the past, which is a living reality. And I think that combination, if I can just, for the sake of the young students who are there, and just allude to certain issues that you brought up, the aspect of observing diffused light, in the courtyards of the Asian village. The aspect of, you didn't state it so clearly, but I'm taking the liberty to state it. The aspect of breaking forms in a certain way, rather than these pristine objects that sat in a landscape, is what differentiates. And then the fact that there are a series of spaces that weave through the building, so you don't have this separation of object situated in the space, but you have a deeper harmony of space as void relating to the form. Would you like to kind of elucidate a little more on it? Because if I the Asian village, in a certain sense, was a benchmark to us when we were young architects, in having to look at that. But how would you see the reinterpretation of these spaces? Because they were not the same traditionally. They were not the same. They may have the same sense of diffuse light or scale, but these were reinterpreted new spaces for modern contemporary life. So, how would you look at that?
Well, I think you have explained it very well. I can't go further than what you have said. But frankly, let's say the National Institute of Technology, which carries the housing Asian village in a different, slightly different direction, and is also very well maintained. Uh, I think the idea that the spaces weave through the buildings, the landscape sort of is a very important element of it. And also, it's all done for a community of scientists, let's say, in this case. And I think, let's say, the weaving of spaces is different from Gulkan, for example. You see, it was made very wonderful posters at the university, but each one is more or less the same or zigzag one pattern. Now I created several of them, but linked together with use of materials, etc., be through with plants and greenery. And so I think the idea was with the community, the idea of the old ashram, let's say, at the back of my mind, if they will all be there, if they will use these spaces. Uh, uh, the other day, there was some kind of a get together there, and there was a young lady who's a doctor now. She said she was brought up there, and she came up to me, and she, I think, very nice compliment. She, that she said she's traveled all around the world, scientist and a doctor and all that. But she said, what we had there, I got to know everybody, they all knew me, and we had could be separate, but we could be together, and we had something which was a wonderful experience, which I had not felt anywhere. And she had lived in Boston, she had lived other places. So I think this is the kind of uh, situation or spaces which I was hoping I'm creating. And I think the people who are living there have to have a final say. But that's what I imagine. And I think you said it very well. I think to, to that there's a somebody else has mentioned some other, but there is an aspect of almost theatricality that you are part of living in a space and you are actors in it. So I think I would put it in a slightly more humane manner, not such a elevated language, that the community become very much part of the spaces which are there, along with its architecture.
No, I agree with you there. And it was not for about an elevated language. I was using the language of the 80s. I said, let me pull it into the 2020s for a moment. Uh, how important, because if one looks at your project, and I think an architect cannot really escape a certain sense of philosophy, or an architect cannot escape a certain sense of what kind of well-being in a certain geography. So in that context, how important is an introverted building to architect Raj Rewal as opposed to a object standing in a pristine space like a sculpture? But how important? Because I see that is a latent theme you return to constantly, the nature of introvertedness. Even though the scale of the buildings can be very large, you're returning to that theme. How important, or where does that begin? This need for the introverted. Even in the library, Parliament Library, we see it. How does that? How does it situate itself? How do you conjure?
Well, you see, Parliament Library is a, at the same time, it had to be embodiment in a way, but at the same time, it had to relate to its surrounding. At the same time, it had to be related to its urban scale. Very difficult problem. I sort of thought about it. Was a competition which I won, and at the same time, it gave me the opportunity uh, to innovate. I know a lot of very good Indian architects are content to be अब जो बन गया तो ऐसे ही है, I I come from a as you can see, I've shown structure as the uh, uh, what Frampton has said tectonic values. In fact, if I may use his sentence recently used to give endorsing my work for something. Okay, it's very tectonic. It's based on structure. Its stone was the basis, in Patapati, etc. In the Parliament Library are very interested in its roof elements. Uh, Again, I think in the book, see, uh, it's this temple, the Jain temple, uh, Ronald. I think it's a fantastic building. Rather than the quality of light, spaces within the building. It's a bit messed up these days. I hope people in Gujarat, I hope to have written personally to them, okay, for God's sake, this is an amazing thing for not only us but for the whole world. So let's say the quality of, I don't know, use word spiritual is being bandied about in such a wrong manner, but the light, perforation of the light in the building, and as a Swiss professor has written that he, I don't know if you've seen his book, I think he should show that Mr. Tironi's book is not translated in English. But there is a book on the Parliament Library. Is it so? The Parliament book. I think there is a little essay by him. And even I was conscious of it, but I didn't see. He said the building is built with the light instruction. And that's what I was aiming at. Because I felt the imperial structures around were little pompous, if I may use the word. I respect them. After all, they had to show this imperial strength to us, in a way. So I wanted to contribute to be a counter to that, as a guru, as I said. So it's with the light, it's with the sort of feeling when you're going around the building that you feel in a different manner than the power of the building. So let's say here the symbolism is little in a different manner. So I am here dealing with, of course, the inner courtyard which leads through the building and inner spaces which are even bigger than the courtyard, so to speak. Here it was ethos of very, let's say, I go back to what again this giant temple and being in the center, peripheral areas, and and how the light percolates through it. But I wanted to do it in a very innovative. After all, there is 4 centuries almost that these temples were made. And I wanted to show that we are building for our time and not we're carrying our heritage forward, but in a very new manner. So all these structures, there are 6 or 8 structural uh, Dominican types in the building, which I think have been studied by Mr. Bigoni very much. But anyway, have a look at it. Uh, even I haven't got a chance to go ahead in that direction very much.
Thank you. There's a very interesting question we've got, and which was also lurking in my mind for some time. There was in the initial phase uh, an engagement with stone. There was a passion of stone emerged from Fatehpur Sikri maybe, but there was a very deep engagement with stone in the initial years. And then there is a moment of shift where you come to uh, aluminum composite planning panels and you come to stainless steel and that working. What were the kind of challenges, or maybe if you would like to share dilemmas, because I think if an architectural practice that has immersed with stone and then elucidated what can happen with stone, in the 3 different ways, right up to grit finish with the manner in which stone is used. Then when it comes to Bangalore, there is another spirit of that stone in that in the microbiology. So even stone speaks in different ways in several of your projects. But now when stainless steel comes or aluminum panels, what were the kind of dilemmas? Because in a simplistic way, if I am to look at it in a naive way, I would say the minute an architect brings in a new material, he is pondering over what is its connection with memory and history. But I think you have attempted to break that simplistic idea. What were the kind of challenges or dilemmas in the design process?
You see, if you, or if I, very difficult to answer your question. But if you see, uh, if I see myself, uh, that we are living in an age which is change, constant change. So amazing change is happening. Materials, technology, and and how to express that is, you see, a lot of architects in our country tend to just, let's say, वहाँ बन गया उसकी, there's a copy of it. But there is, I think we have the potential to take it in a very creatively, in a different direction. You see, we are still not in the industrial, uh, uh, let's say, in industrial technology in the country. We look at industry in a slightly different manner. Technology for us. So, I mean, I have been complimented by some European architects. कि हम ये नहीं कर सकते. We could not have done it. It's beyond, because they are molded. There is a system, and within that you operate. But in India, we have that, or at least I have certainly had that advantage so far, to take a direction, take risk. It's a lot of risk when you start a totally different journey into creativity, thinking this direction. I mean, you're taking a risk. How it would be, both in technical terms. So let's say when I did the roof of the parliament building, the entire excuse me, the entire CPWD was, as you can imagine, कि क्या कर रहे हो, हमारी it will be, हमारी pension रह जाएगी, that kind of thing. So I said, no, we have to, you go and see the world, what they are doing. Come back. He said, you write a letter to the minister that we can travel. So actually I did. And they went around, they came back, they had confidence. We can do it in a different manner, and we can do it cheaply, we can do it. So we have that advantage. And see, Hall of Nations couldn't be built anywhere. Parliament Library, I don't think can be. We have the expertise. You see, our engineers are very good in that. Detailing, not so much maybe, but that we as architects have to supply it. And I have, let's say, think of building very much in the engineering conceptual world. And I don't know, first book by Brian Taylor, because building was only one of nations. I can only express myself in structure, which is partially true. Structures is the basis of building, geometric structure. So I think that's the direction I think we can all take. I mean, it depends on the kind of work, because the buildings have functional aspects. They are situated, located somewhere, contextual thing, and the cultural aspect. There's, by the way, new book in French just come out 15 days ago. Can you show it? We don't have it yet. And it says Raj Rewal's work, or sorry, it sounds coming from my own mouth, sounds a little bragging, but this is the title of the book, in the cultural landscape. So in a way, it's for others to see what manner it is done. I mean, as you know, I've built in China, I've built in Portugal, and I nearly built in France. What a competition which could be built. Anyway, that's another story. But the point is, I think the past is an inspiration, but we have to see very fast because things are happening. I mean, look at if you now we're building malls, we're building airports, we are building all kinds of buildings, and I think we have to build new kinds of monuments. I don't know if I answered you.
No, it does. In fact, it leads to the next question, which again tends to be a little, it
Okay, my
tends to
day
be,
is going, so I want to learn how to close on that. And I don't know, many people must be tired also.
sure.
There is
We'll
a
end
two,
with
so I'm asking him to go.
no, we'll end with one more. We'll just end with this question on um, in terms of the, because we were talking about this shift in terms of the rasas that you talked about. Do you see in this age of rapid change that we're in now, and we'll close with that, because I recall your conversations on the rasas in Jaipur and then earlier. Uh, how do you see engaging in the rasas, which at one level require a shared meaning, and now we have so much rapid change with so much diversity. How do you see the exploration of that? And we can close with that. And what would you say? Because
Well, you see, as you said, we are making very different kind, very diverse kind. Let's say there's the housing on one side, there's the library on one side, there is this new in Punjab, a different project, and there is universities. These are epic works which we are doing in India. No other country is doing it. Actually, the Chinese did it, and they, I think they copied the West. Unfortunate situation there. They're very good at it. They make it very well, but they are making copies of coffee. And I hope we don't fall into that trap because each building type has to generate its own ambience, its own rasa, its own character, and find a way so that the people living in it have a certain pleasure, a certain joy of a different kind. Let's say CIT building, when we went, you were with me, Ankit, there was people who have been using it for the last 14, 15 years. And I was with some Brazilian person who was wanting to see the building. And they started telling him कि रोज आता दिन आने ऑफिस आने का दिल करता है रोज because we are in such a good building. I couldn't have got myself a better compliment. And I hope every architect thinks like that. If the people who use it enjoy being there, they have a pleasure, a different kind of rasa in a way. I mean, it's not only that you go to music, concert, and theater to have enjoyment, but being in a building itself and a different kinds of rasa, different kind of pleasure. Let's say university building would have different ambience, an office building different, the library different, so playground different, airport different, railway station. I haven't been one, but hopefully somebody who does it thinks in those terms. There should be a different kind of feeling of different ambience. So that is what I mean by rasa, a different flavor. And that comes around when you have a the French use the word promenade architecture, that when you're moving around. So you absorb a certain kind of feelings. I haven't done in hospital, but let's say if that was given to me, I would have to find a different kind of rasa. So I think maybe we can.
thank you. Thank you, Architect Raj Rewal, for that wonderful rendition and ending it on a note where we talk about rasa, essence, joy, coming from diversity as well as appropriateness to that context and situation. It's been a long journey. We've all been inspired by our journey. And the Council of Architecture, on behalf of the Council, we are honored that you could participate in the inaugural of this digital festival. And this talk will also go into the schools now. There are many more questions, but maybe we'll email it to Ankit at some later time.
They should go through with it certain books, I think they,
Yes, I think in that context
one
I
or
will.
two, the housing book we should also put in.
Okay,
I think it's a reprint would be difficult, but I think we'll put it in so students have the access to it. Anyway,
sure.
thank you very much from my
Thank
side.
you very much. Thank you.
Okay. Yep. Okay.